It's a very pretty place here. This is the Little Susitna River. I'm at the, you don't want to step off trail because then all of a sudden you can immediately sink on down. Let me get on a little more stable ground over here. Well, thanks for joining me. It's Fred in Alaska. As you can see, I'm standing here next to the Little Susitna River in this little canyon. Hatcher's Pass is further up that way, that direction there. But this is one of the prettiest areas in this little canyon because you got these steep walls. It's just beautiful. So someone had asked me about weird UFO stuff that I've experienced, and I believe I've shared it before, but I'll share it again. Hold on. Back in 1998, me and my dad and my cousin Jason Brandon, we were on the Nushagak River. We left late for a moose hunt, and hold on, let me clear a little seat here. It's a pain in the butt breaking trail. Tried to follow the moose, but they only went so far. There we go. Let me put my gloves down here. Give me a second. Should have brought my jacket to use as a seat, but this will work. So, excuse me. We left Dillingham late. We headed out to do a moose hunt, and we knew we were gonna be fighting the tide, and we were concerned. Tried to make arrangements to stay at a family friend's cabin, a relative actually, and it was unavailable. So we continued on up. Our plan was to get to Black Bluff before it got dark. Well, it didn't work. We ended up getting stranded on a gravel bar in the tidal zone there on the Nushagak, just below Black Bluff, about a half mile. At this particular spot, once it got dark, our flashlights and stuff worked just fine, but we couldn't see the channel and all that, so we decided to wait for the tide and just putter on up to Black Bluff and camp out right near Angel Bay. And as we were sitting there, about, gosh, it'd gone into really dark, like pitch black, couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but we noticed all of a sudden, upriver from us, I'm gonna guess about a mile, bright light that you could see the snaking of the river. I mean, it was the brightest light I ever seen. And so we're like, oh, someone must be spotlighting moose, you know. This was, I believe, before they outlawed it, spotlighting moose. Or maybe it was already outlawed. But anyway, we assumed someone was spotlighting moose. So we figured, well, with that bright of a light, maybe they can, you know, guide us to the channel and you know, light up the area so we can get up on the Black Bluff and camp out. So we're sitting there for a little bit, and we're watching this light slowly snake down the river, out of view, but we could see it lighting up at both sides of the river, just bright as hell. And as we were sitting there, there was a weird, uneasy feeling going on because of how it was going down. Just something was off about it. There was no motor noise, but when you're drifting, you don't have your motor running anyway, so we thought nothing of that. And as we were sitting there contemplating, you know, how we're gonna flag them down or whatever, I was like, well, with that bright light, they'll see us. And so we're anticipating this thing breaking into our view coming downstream, because it was just coming around the bend, boom, gone. Light was just totally gone. All of a sudden below us, just around the curve, lights back up. State plow truck making that noise. Driving like a maniac for these tight roads. Anyway, so it lit up behind us, and I mean, it was in an instant. Like, as soon as it should have been in our view, boom, it was out and back on below us. So all of a sudden it lit up behind us. so bright that we could see our shadow. So we turned around, and of course it was just out of view, and it kept floating down. And immediately, like, my dad's a Vietnam vet, and he doesn't like loaded guns. He's not against hunting or guns. He just don't like loaded guns when it's unnecessary. Immediately, he says, get the guns out and load them. Because he could sense what me and my cousin Jason sensed as well. Something just wasn't right. So we're sitting there, guns loaded up, and my dad usually only held a gun just to keep an eye for bears while we gutted moose and you know, did the quartering and stuff. But other than that, he just didn't want no part of it. However, that night, he had nothing but the gun in his hand. He was giving us tips on shooting, all sorts of stuff. He knew I could shoot, but my cousin Jason was the unproven one in the group because he had just tagged along, and I knew Jason could shoot. I didn't know how well or anything, but anyway. So we're having this discussion about this light, and the light goes out below us, maybe half mile further down. And it's pitch black again, and so we're sitting in the dark, and my dad was like, let's use the oars and just push our way closer to Black Bluff. I want to get on solid ground and maybe have the bluff behind us as a backstop, you know, and, you know, kind of box ourselves in. And well, we ended up getting out into the channel. The tide started turning, and so we're able to get into the channel and use the flashlights enough to get up to Angel Bay, which, I mean, we stopped at Black Bluff briefly and got some firewood. Decided to go to Angel Bay on this one island, and we had chainsaws and stuff. So we get across, and basically I hop off into the willow alders and stuff and just hack them down to ground level. I chewed that chain up. I was just, it was hellacious. I cut out this big horseshoe shape, and we basically started a fire in the middle. No tents or anything were gotten out. And as we were sitting around this campfire, my dad was telling us old hunting stories, and something about a weird light they had seen before somewhere down Butt Bay or something like that, down by Togiak. But totally different situation or whatever. So as we're sitting there talking, behind the island that we were on, like, everything lit up against Black Bluff in front of us across the river on the Nushagak there. It lit up, and you could see the alders and all the brush shadowed against Black Bluff. So immediately we're looking through, like, what the hell? It goes out in an instant. Above us, above Black Bluff in front of us, it lit up behind there, and you could see the whole ridge line just silhouetted. It did that a couple times, and then light was gone. All of a sudden it lit back up down, we guesstimated near Ecock. Just real creepy, dead silent. And that was one of the episodes. It was, I believe it was in 95, 96, somewhere in there. Those few years in the late 90s bleed together for me. But I was helping a guy bear hunt, and we had went down this valley, and the valley is about a mile and a half, 2 miles across, rough, give or take. And we're following this big brown bear. It was nice. It was no rubs on it, just beautiful, beautiful. If you're gonna get a trophy bear, it's what you want. I've since learned my lesson about trophy hunting. I don't do that crap, but I was young and it was bravado. So anyway, we're going along, and we follow it, and we notice it's backtracking. So immediately we went to high ground to get above it to get a nice shot on it. Well, as it was coming back towards us, it cut up this draw out of our view, and it was getting dark. So we assumed, oh, it's going to go up in this draw and sleep out for the night. So let's stay on this ridge, and we'll keep an eye for first light. When it comes out, we'll get the drop on this bear. So we're sitting there. We didn't light a fire because we didn't want the smoke to scare the bear. And so we're laying there. No tents, no sleeping bags, none of that shit, just leaning on the backpack and firearms across the chest. And across the valley, there's these little finger gullies that cut up this particular mountain, and there was 3 of them that kind of cut up and ran up, and they're decent, you know, like, I guess you could consider them avalanche chutes, or, you know, rock slides, whatever you want to call them. But they came down into an actual gully and didn't just splay out at the bottom. And so these gullies ran up, and as we're sitting there talking and just BSing about hunting, you know, rifles, distance, round, blah, blah. Well, I noticed these two pinpoints of light, and they looked really, really small, but they were bright, and they got my attention across the valley down at the base of one of these gullies. Now, when I was watching these lights, it was weird. I was like, those are some heavy-duty flashlights to be that bright at this distance. I thought someone had some new technology lights or something. Well, that wasn't the case. These two lights stayed parallel to each other and started moving up the first little gully. And as they were doing that, they appeared to get larger as they did so. Now, I couldn't tell you how large they got because of the distance we were at, but they definitely got larger. And it was almost like a pendulum swing, but real slow without the counter swing. They would swing up into the gully, get bigger, come back down, and as they got back down, the pinpoints of light got smaller again. And it was the damnedest thing. And me and the hunter were looking at this, and we're like, what are we seeing? You know, I was like, what is that? He was like, maybe it's something military. And I was like, for them to move that distance, that we would hear a motor, it'd have to be on a helicopter to move that kind, because at that distance, it was moving hundreds and hundreds of yards and back within seconds. I mean, and silently. So these lights would go up, get brighter, and it did it for about, I want to say half hour, 45 minutes, as we're just kind of like, not really saying much, but trying to like figure out, what are we watching? What are we seeing? So the lights kind of fade out and we're not noticing them. And I would say about another hour goes by. And in the center of the valley, there was weird kind of electricity in the air, this weird humming kind of sound. And sorry, my butt's getting wet. It's too warm, melting snow under me. So as we're sitting there, we felt this weird energy. Kind of, it's hard to put into words. Hold on, I gotta get my gloves in my pocket so I don't lose them. So we're just kind of looking at the valley, and grant you, it's dark, and where we're at, we're about, I'd say, 500 to 700 feet in elevation above the valley floor. I would maybe a little more, maybe 1,000 feet. Now, when we're sitting there looking down, in the fall, it was twilight for, it wasn't quite pitch black yet. It was just a little bit of twilight left, and we could kind of make out the valley bottom, but we couldn't make out details. Well, this like silver milk dud shaped thing just drops out of the sky, almost to the center of the valley, and it was roughly about, gosh, it was hard to tell its size. It had size to it, but it was hard to tell because of the distance and our elevation versus its. It almost looked even with us, but it almost looked a little lower. So I'm guessing it dropped down to about 600-700 feet off the ground. And it wasn't illuminated, but it was, you could tell it was shiny and milk dud shaped, or just odd shaped. It wasn't like a saucer or anything, but it was kind of like a squished up football almost. And sat there for a minute, kind of, it didn't move anything, and then shot up into the air and just gone. Creepy shit. We ended up getting that bear the next day at about 10:30 in the morning. But yeah, the instances like that, I'm sure, happen all the time here in Alaska. No one reports it though. Who wants to be labeled as a kook? Me, I don't give a flying rat's ass what anyone thinks. But again, we're here at the Little Susitna, a very beautiful place. Gosh, if it wasn't for the traffic, it would just be beautifully quiet. You can see where someone was hiking along and then kind of backtracked over into here. That'd be some trippy stuff if these were barefoot prints, huh? They're not. They're awfully off of a shod foot. Yeah, you can see some boot marks there. Man, just a beautiful place. Goodness. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I love Alaska. It's a love-hate though. Love to hate it, hate to love it, however you want to put it. But hey, per request, someone asked me about weird UFO stuff. If anyone else had any crazy stuff happen up here in Alaska, feel free to share it. I'm here to, it's the Hairy Man project, but I'm here to share everything weird in Alaska. From the Hairy Man to little people, UFOs, Kushtaka, whatever. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. And, man, geez, it's so pretty here. It's mid-30s right now, so I don't want to get too far out on any ice because it's unstable. Goodness. I like to have a hammock right up there between a couple of them trees, stable trees, not those dead black spruce, and just chill. And view up there, I'm sure, is awesome. Oh, it looks like some fox tracks over here. I wish I knew it was more stable. I'd go out on it and walk around and go up the river a little bit, but I ain't risking that. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. I have some Hairy Man experiences coming from Fort Wainwright. Creepy stuff happening up there, guys. So if anyone else has had any experiences near Fort Wainwright, 6 Mile along that drainage, feel free to hit me up so I can add it to the compilation I'm doing next. So y'all have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one.